The thing no one tells you about shadow work is it's going to feel like things are falling apart. It's not going to feel like it's helping you at first. And that's confusing because you do shadow work expecting that it's going to help you feel better. And instead, you feel weird, unrecognizable, maybe. So you wonder if you're doing it wrong or if it's even worth doing at all. And that's why I think today's talk is so important because all of these feelings like, this isn't working, I feel really lost in all of this, what the fuck is going on, are not signs that it's not working. They are the exact signs that it is working. So let's break down the 5 most common confusing signs that shadow work is working, even if it feels like everything's falling apart. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am Dana Solara. I'm an astrologer and spiritual coach, and I specialize in self-reclamation, that path of coming back home to yourself, which of course definitely involves shadow work. Now, if you're not familiar with the term shadow work, which I think you probably are if you're watching this, but if you've never ever heard of it before, it was coined by the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, and it's really quite a buzzword today, almost on the level of manifesting. And just like manifesting, shadow work has gotten kind of fuzzy in terms of what it actually is. Most, if not all, of the people who are talking about shadow work online are not doing it in the way Carl Jung first proposed it to the world. And I don't think we really need to do shadow work the way Jung intended us to do. It's certainly an option if you want to be a purist. But all shadow work really is getting honest with yourself. Specifically, it's about getting honest with yourself about the parts of you that you run away from, or you ignore, or you tend to just kind of brush under the rug. It's the act of shining the light in the shadowy part of your psyche, which is, of course, an act of radical honesty and clearing and cleansing. And the reason we do shadow work at all is because those parts of us that we ignore and run away from, they don't just stay under the rug without bothering us at all. In fact, they run our lives on autopilot without us knowing it. So we do shadow work in order to free ourselves of the patterns, the loops, and ultimately the ruts that we end up putting ourselves in by ignoring them in the first place. You've heard name it to tame it, probably. Shadow work is the act of arriving at the naming so that you can do the taming. And I'm bringing this up not just to give you a handy definition and history of shadow work, but to name the fact that we come to shadow work in the first place because something is amiss in our lives. We are trying to recalibrate to a more authentic, aligned, and ultimately honest place in our lives because we found ourselves in a circumstance that we don't feel good in. There's something about our lives that feels performative, fake, or just simply not good for us anymore. And so we felt the call within ourselves to get really fucking honest about what our part in our lives is. And that's a key component of shadow work too. It's ultimately taking responsibility for yourself. And I don't know about you, but when I hear that word responsibility, my inner child who suffered through Catholic school is deeply activated. I don't want it. And so there is a natural resistance that comes with shadow work. There's a reason we repress this shit. There's a reason we run away from it. But there's also a reason we feel the call to take a look at what we've left behind there. And so none of this work is inherently fun, let's say, but it is deeply necessary and deeply, deeply healing. And so what can be a little confusing is we come to shadow work as a remedy to a life that doesn't feel good anymore. And we think that that remedy is going to bring immediate relief. But often what happens first is we get more confused, we get more disoriented, and we can experience that and think, oh, I'm making things worse. This isn't working. Let me turn around, U-turn, and get out of here. But then we abandon the work right before it's about to really deeply help us. So here are the 5 signs that you are actually doing shadow work correctly and it's working the way it's intended to, but you may not be to the part where it feels good yet. The first sign is people telling you that you've changed. Sometimes they're going to tell you that in an honest way, in a complimentary way, even. And sometimes there's going to be an undercurrent of, you've changed. And often we see this kind of early on. That can really hit us when we're early in our healing journey, because often what we're healing from is some sort of self abandonment, some sort of fear of rejection, some sort of people pleasing tendency or anxious attachment. And when we get a feeling like the people that we've been close to or relied on are pulling away from us, because that's what it feels like when you hear that. You've changed has a subtext sometimes of, I don't relate to you anymore. I don't think I know this new version of you, especially if it's got that undertone that we were just talking about. So it can make us really question if what we're doing is good or worthwhile, or if it's ultimately going to hurt us more than it's helping us. It can make you really want to shrink back when you hear someone say this to you, especially at the beginning. But what I want to point out here is that is exactly what you're after. If you are engaging in shadow work, you are actively trying to change. Will everybody like it? No, they won't. Because if you're healing from self abandonment, I can guarantee there are people in your life who are benefiting from that. And this can get really complicated, because the people who are benefiting from your self abandonment are not evil people 100% of the time. There is no wholesale binary of good and bad here. Like, you could be married, let's say, to a generally good person, and they could benefit from your self abandonment, because maybe you're taking on, let's say, the load of the housework for them because that's what you were raised to believe good women do, just as an example. And surely your partner benefits from that, right? And so when they notice that you're not doing that, and hopefully you've had a conversation with them about this, you've been honest in your communication. Hey, I'm doing some inner reflection. I'm noticing that I clean the house constantly because I am worried about you leaving, whatever, whatever. So you have that conversation. But if you don't, and your partner notices that you are no longer doing that, they might say, hey, you're not doing that anymore. I've noticed that you're changing. That can feel threatening, and that would be a good time to have that conversation if you haven't already. Yes, I've realized that that's a manifestation of my self abandonment. And I am going to continue to clean the house, but maybe not in this way. Let's have a discussion of how to share the load equally. That is part of the healing. And that's really beautiful. So if you hear someone say, hey, you've kind of changed, I notice you're different lately in this area of life, that is your invitation to have that honest dialogue with them, because shadow work is just as much about being honest with yourself as it is about being honest with other people. Often when we need to do shadow work, it's because we've fallen into this pattern of not being honest, not just with ourselves, but with other people as well. Again, it really often boils down to a fear of rejection and abandonment. We think we have to be somebody specific for certain people, and we shape shift and perform and become that version of ourselves that's really not authentic. So you've changed is a compliment, whether they mean it as a compliment or not. That's what you're trying to do with shadow work. And if someone says this to you, you can either have an honest conversation about it. Yes, I am. Here's what's going on with me. Or if you don't feel comfortable doing that, or safe to do that, maybe the person who's saying it is not someone who deserves to have that conversation with you. Maybe they're being hateful. And you can just simply say, yes, I am, and move on. You don't owe anyone an explanation that isn't open enough to have a discussion with you about it. So the second sign that your shadow work is working is things that didn't used to bother you do now. Or vice versa, things that did bother you don't anymore. This is where I want to tell a personal story, because, like I said, I lived this and I continue to live this. I think shadow work is something that is a work of a lifetime. It's something you're never done doing. But when you're first getting into it, these are the things that are really disorienting, right? And for me, shadow work really kicked off in my sobriety journey. I quit drinking at the end of 2019. I've talked about this a lot on the channel. And I started to noticed things about drinking culture once I quit drinking that I never noticed before that were fascinating to me because I was so deeply immersed in drinking culture. I grew up and live in St. Louis, which is like the home of Anheuser-Busch. So, long story short, everybody drinks here. And I really didn't know a soul in my life who didn't drink until I quit drinking. And when I did, I realized, first of all, that I was using drinking to mask social anxiety. This was a truth that became apparent right away because the first social event I went to where there was alcohol and I was not partaking, I was stressed to the max. I did not know how to function without a beer in my hand at a social event. But what was interesting in that was I was able to notice the social dynamics that were unfolding all around me in drinking situations that I would never have noticed before. One of those things was noticing other people pushing drinks. Now, it wasn't like a Dare commercial where you have some scary person coming out of the corner, like offering you beer and drugs, but it's that thing of, hey, I'm getting another one. Do you want one too? And of course, you could say, like, that's just someone being polite and courteous. But to me, it was a subtle push because when you say no to that, as I did, you notice some people are just fine with it. And then you notice others feel a little weird about it because they want you to drink with them. And that bothered me in a way that it never had before. But at the same time, and this was really beautiful, the sense of rejection that I got from feeling like I was letting people down when I didn't go ahead and order another round with them or whatever, or order a round at all in this case, I didn't care as much before I quit drinking. If people were getting another round, I felt obligated to do it with them because I wanted to belong. I wanted to feel like I was part of what they were doing. And after I quit, yes, the first couple of times where I had to say, like, hey, I'm not drinking, or no, I don't want anything, thanks, it was awkward, but I stopped feeling weird about it pretty quickly, even when I noticed people had their drinking spidey senses kind of elevated around me, like, oh, that's weird. She's not drinking. I didn't care as much anymore because I knew that that was a them thing and not a me thing. And if they were going to judge me for not drinking, then fuck them, right? That's not something I need to concern myself or worry myself with. And how this shows up for you is going to be totally unique to you, but you're going to observe the ways in which you were totally on autopilot before. And you're going to notice things in other people that you never would have noticed before either. It's going to add a whole new level of dimension to your relationships. Again, not just your relationships with other people, but your relationship with yourself. You're going to see where you started to abandon yourself in the past and where you're no longer signing up for that anymore. And it's going to give you a lot of freedom and agency that you never had access to when you were just going with the flow. The third sign that your shadow work is working, and this is where things start to feel really shaky, like the ground beneath your feet is really kind of moving, is your relationships start to shift or fall away. This one is really hard. I'm not going to lie, because nobody signs up for shadow work hoping to lose people. We do this in hopes of having a more aligned, joyful, fulfilling life. But when you stop running the old defenses and the old ways of relating, some relationships just simply won't stand up to that. They're not going to be able to hold this new version of you. If you think about it, what a relationship is, a one on one relationship is like a connection that you have with somebody else. You have things in common. And if in your shadow work, you discover some of the things you were doing, some of the behaviors that you were participating in, some of your habits were actually masking something deeper, and you need to let those go. The old ways you had of connecting with people may no longer be there anymore. The old ways you had of connecting with people are no longer there. That connection is gone. And I think it's really important to not just brush that under the rug and say, well, good riddance or whatever. There's real grief in this. It's hard to acknowledge that some relationships are not going to make it through this evolution that I'm going through right now. I think it's important to take the time to sit with your feelings and be sad about it if you're sad about it, or be mad about it if you're mad about it. And it's not always that the relationship completely ends. It's just that it can't continue on the way that it is. We need to communicate new boundaries, new ways of connecting and relating with one another, or we aren't going to be as close as we used to be. This was the case with some of my friends from college, where really the thing that bonded us was drinking. And it's not that I don't love them, it's not that I don't care about them. And I think they would probably say the same about me, but we just don't have that much to talk about anymore. And that's okay. So it's a lot about emotional maturity as well. Both the emotional maturity to sit with your own feelings, to be honest with yourself about them, to allow space for them, and the emotional maturity to say, it's okay if we're not vibing anymore because of the way that I'm changing. I've got to take care of me. You've got to take care of you. And if this isn't working the way that it was before, that's cool. We can find a different way to connect, or we can go our separate ways and we can be at peace with that. Now, that can be much more challenging when we're talking about a family member. And I'll have to do this a different talk on this because I have a lot to say about this. I'll say right now, after I quit drinking, I had a big falling out with my family, both people in my immediate family, people in my extended family. And some of us we've reconciled, some of us have not. And I know for them, they felt hurt by things I was saying because I decided to go on a podcast and talk about the problem drinking in my family. And it really hurt some of the people in my family. And I can understand why, because I was speaking some truths that are not spoken in an alcoholic family, frankly. You don't talk about drinking in a family that has a drinking problem. And so I did the unspeakable thing and they took offense. And first of all, I have to just respect that they feel the way they feel about it and that they feel the way they feel about me. Now, did I get there immediately? Hell no. I suffered a lot and probably more than I needed to. I pitied myself. I felt bad for myself. Oh, I can't believe they're treating me like this. And it's okay to feel sad about it, you know? It's okay to feel like upset that people aren't responding the way that you want them to in this moment of your life, especially people in your family, uh, especially your parents, right? Like, because a lot of us are going to experience this with our parents. A lot of us going on this path grew up with emotionally immature parents. So we're dealing with people frequently who are, one, supposed to be the adult role models in our lives, our caregivers, and two, don't have the capacity to be emotionally responsible and emotionally mature the way that we are trying to be. So it's extremely frustrating and disheartening and upsetting, et cetera, to try to be vulnerable and try to be honest with someone who is supposed to be there for you, your family, and they simply cannot be. But that is part of the healing too. It's the capacity, building the capacity to speak and share your truth and to be okay with somebody not liking it, because it's not up to you whether or not they like it. And it frankly doesn't matter whether or not they like it. The most important thing in your shadow work is learning how to be honest. And if being honest means losing some relationships, unfortunately, so be it. It doesn't always have to come to that. And I will say, again, with this falling out I had with my family, most of those relationships, we were able to over time have conversations and repair and reconcile some of that pain and hurt. But to be perfectly honest with you, I don't look at them the same way anymore, but I have forgiven them. I don't look to certain people in my family for comfort or validation anymore because of the things that have happened. And because I don't think they can give me what I want and need, right? I go to other people for that I can trust with that. Do I still love them as my family? Of course. Of course I do. And I always will. But I will not go to them for that kind of support anymore. I don't have that level of trust with them anymore. And maybe we can have that level of trust built back one day. So I think it's important to really separate yourself from the other people in your life in terms of their judgments meaning anything about you personally. How they feel about you and your truth has nothing to do with you. It's none of your business. And this is where we heal entanglement, emotional entanglement. And the sad fact of the matter, maybe it's not sad, but kind of unavoidable or a challenging fact of the matter is to heal entanglement, you have to confront it. There is this level of confrontation of, oh, I feel hurt because you're judging me. We kind of have to experience that in order to unhook ourselves from it. So when you experience a change in your relationships, and I don't say if, I say when, because if you're doing this right, you will experience changes in your relationships. And look, these can be good things too. It might feel challenging and yucky and murky and confusing at first, but over time and through honest conversations and a willingness to listen, both for you and the other person, there can be a really beautiful healing and reconciliation in this where you build a relationship that's much more true and beautiful and serving of the needs of both you and the other person than you ever would have had before all of this. Because even with my ugliest confrontation with a certain family member I'm thinking of who meant and means still a lot to me, I think my relationship with that person is better now than it ever was before all of that. Even though we maybe talked more before all of this, we maybe saw each other more before all of this, at least now they know the real me. And at least now I'm not afraid to speak up for myself and be honest about how I'm feeling and what I need and want when it comes to my relationship with this person. And that's what you have to look forward to, even though the initial confrontation of dealing with the change and the dynamic can feel really disorienting and really, really hard. Sign number 4, your shadow work is working, even if it feels very fucked up, is you're longing for a past you don't even want to go back to. So what happens with shadow work is you get super honest about what you've been avoiding, what you've been running away from, the things you're doing to try to escape the things that you don't want to look at. And you stop doing those things. Like for me, it was drinking, among other things. So you stop doing that. You start getting honest about what's underneath that: social anxiety, fear of rejection, people pleasing. And you start to lose those things that once had a really strong grip over you. You start to see them play out in your life in real time. And when you can recognize them, they no longer have that power over you. Well, then what happens is your life feels very different. It feels so different that it can feel like you're a transplant in your life. Like someone has just picked you up and moved you over to a different timeline. And you're like, where even am I? What is this? You feel like Dorothy when she wakes up in Oz. And that can create this odd feeling of nostalgia for the comfort and the familiarity of the life that you were living before. And especially when you're dealing with these challenges in your relationship dynamics and having to be brave and honest all the time and speaking up for yourself, these are all really challenging things to do. And the comfort of the life you were living, because it was known to you, can feel really enticing. But let's be honest about what this is. This is grief for the familiar, not a desire for something that's truly better for you. Your nervous system likes to know what to expect. We seek comfort and familiarity in all things on a subconscious level. That is how we have learned to survive. That's how our bodies have evolved over all of these years of human existence. So anytime you're putting yourself in unfamiliar territory, whether that's literally going to a place you've never been to before or foreign emotional territory, there is going to be a heightened sense of anxiety. And that anxiety can make you long for the place of comfort and familiarity. And what's kind of fucked up about that is you long for it even though it was painful. And that's what I want you to remember when this feeling comes up, because it can put you in this wistful place of longing that can really derail your work because it makes you think that one, this is actually worse than what I was doing before and what was happening before. And two, it brings your energy down. And what I mean by that is it puts you in a place where you start becoming really pessimistic and negative, and you start thinking that this work is, again, not helping you, which makes it really hard to get to the part where things get better. It can really unravel all of the work you've already done. So it's super important when you start to get in this place of longing and nostalgia for how things were before. And like, I wish that I could just undo all of the things I said that made these relationships so complicated, even though it was the honest and right thing that needed to be said. If you start feeling like that, I need you to remember that the reason you started doing this work in the first place was because you were not happy. Things were not okay. Just because it was comfortable doesn't mean it was good, doesn't mean it was right for you, doesn't mean that it was the necessary thing for you to be doing. Wishing things were more comfortable is human. It's totally natural, but that is not a good reason to go back to how things once were. This feeling is a reminder and a sign that you are moving through it. You are on the path and you are closer and closer every day to the version of you that is adjusted, that is grounded within herself, that feels confident and capable, and is okay with the fact that people might not like you. Like that was so crushing to me at first. The thought that someone might not like me. Oh my God. Why wouldn't they like me? What have I done to make them not like me? And now I'm just like, yeah, like not everyone's going to like me. And for pretty much all of us, that's something we can accept on a logical level. But when it's someone who we know personally or someone that we're supposed to be close to, like someone in our family, it feels like a tragedy. And it feels like, wow, maybe I really fucked up my life by going on this journey of honesty. And maybe I was too blunt or too honest. And guess what? You can apologize. We are going to make mistakes on this path. We are going to say things in a way that's maybe not as diplomatic as we'd like. We're going to get angry with people. We're going to get angry with ourselves. And it doesn't mean you're doing this wrong. Not only that, but there really is no going back. You can't close this Pandora's box that is shadow work. You can only go deeper and keep going. Once you know what you know, you cannot forget it. And you could long for the maybe innocence of not knowing that, but why would you? You're on the path to something so much better, so much more honest, so much more real that you don't want to go back, really. You just want to feel comfortable again. And the best news of all is that you are actively creating that sense of grounding and comfort within yourself by doing this in the first place. So if you're feeling this way, allow yourself to feel it, acknowledge it for what it is. One, it's just a feeling. Two, it's totally normal. It's my nervous system wanting comfort and familiarity. Three, give yourself some freaking self-care. Take care of yourself. Do things that do feel familiar to you. And really, my favorite suggestion for working with and soothing this feeling are things you loved to do as a kid. Inner child work is perfect for this because that will feel deeply familiar to you and it will restore a sense of familiarity within yourself. Like, I don't need to people please or shape shift or frankly lie about my needs and desires to other people to feel okay. I can take care of myself. For me, it was dancing and doing choreography. It was doing Cat's Cradle, the string games, if you're familiar with that. It was coloring. It was going on walks. So make your list of comfort activities that help you feel like yourself. That is going to really soothe any kind of feeling of wishing things could, quote, just go back to normal. As newsflash, babe, this is your new normal, and that's a good thing. The fifth and final sign that your shadow work is working, even though it may not feel like it, is you feel like you don't know yourself. And I was kind of alluding to that in what we were just talking about. It is definitely the most disorienting part of shadow work. And it's also the most important thing for us to reframe in this conversation today. Because here is the truth, and this was always true. Before the shadow work, you did not know yourself either. Before the shadow work, you were performing a version of yourself you thought would get you validation, attention, and approval. You were accommodating to everyone else so that people would like you and give you a proverbial A plus and pat on the head. You were running on autopilot so you wouldn't have to face the reality of what was underneath all of that self-abandonment and shape-shifting and people-pleasing, which is that you were afraid you're not likable. And so you ran away from yourself because you were trying to be what you thought would get you love and approval. And the part of you that started this process knew that. That is why you started this process in the first place. That feeling of something's not right. I feel like a supporting actress in my own life. I feel like a ghost in my own life. Those feelings are the thoughts that are rooted in a self-abandonment signature. They are clues that you really didn't know who you were then. Because if you did, you would be able to simply be that person. The quest of shadow work is ultimately about recovery. It's about recovering a true essence of who you are. And it is the work of a lifetime, but especially when you're first getting started, you're letting go of the performative, people pleasing, shape shifting version of you. So, yes, you are losing yourself, quote unquote, but you're not losing the real you. You're losing the version of you that you used to survive. And now that you're no longer in survival mode, you get to recover the part of you that's true. And that part of you gets to be fully embodied and show up in its full lit up luminosity, in its full unique brilliance. And when you're facing that valley, that chasm between the performative version of you that you knew you had to leave behind and the real you, the essence of who you are that you're trying to take back and embody, staring that valley in the face can feel like a lot. It can feel very intimidating, but you're facing it with open eyes now. And although it's uncomfortable, it is incredibly worthy. It is really so necessary if you want a fulfilling, joyous, peaceful, expansive life. It's the only way to do it. And it does make sense to grieve, make space for the grieving. For me, I really had to grieve the fact that I had abandoned myself all that time, that I had become someone I couldn't even recognize, that I had no clue who I was. In fact, I didn't even know what I liked to do for fun. After I quit drinking, it was so confusing to me that I could be that unaware of who I truly was. And that was truly upsetting. So make space for that. Be upset about that. But you don't have to live there, right? Grieve the fact that you put on a mask to be who you thought other people needed you to be lovable. And then recognize the fact that you are inherently lovable, that you are inherently beautiful, wonderful, incredible. You are a soul having a human experience, and your soul, your essence that you're coming back to is perfect. It's perfect. Okay. And you are reconnecting with that perfect essence that you definitely have within you and that we all have within us. And knowing that as you move through this valley of shadow work and you move back up toward your essence, that's your North Star. You get to let go of what has happened with acceptance. Like, yes, I people pleased. Yes, I abandoned myself for over a decade and really for like the first 30 years of my life. I had no clue who I was. That sucks. And I do feel sad about that, even still to this day, despite the fact that I started my shadow work journey in 2019. But I have moved into a place of acceptance. I accept that that happened. And in fact, I'm grateful on some level that that happened, because that is what has allowed me to get right here, to be talking to you, to be sharing this with you. You have no idea how good it's about to get for you because you are choosing yourself now. You get to live the life that you came here to live now. And although it's sad that these things have happened, they have happened. And now what? The now what is where we get to move up the, what are we calling this? I don't know, the canyon, the canyon of shadow work. We get to move back up to the plateau where we can see the North Star of who we came here to be, who we're meant to become, and we get to become that version of ourselves. So if you feel lost, if you feel disoriented, if you feel like, who even am I anymore? That's a good thing. And the process of answering that question is a sign that you are getting closer and closer to the part where you feel grounded, secure, and at peace, and not like you're in this fog of what the fuck is happening in this shadow work journey. Now, if you want to go even deeper with shadow work, you know I'm an astrologer and I love using astrology in an applied way. And one of the applications that I use astrology for is shadow work, your birth chart and the chart of the moment or the chart of the past, the transits. They are incredible tools for shadow work because they can give you language that you would not be able to reach any other way. So this is something I teach in Astrology Beyond Prediction, which is a mini course I have with 6 different power practices for how to apply astrology for healing, manifesting, and personal growth. I will link it below if you are interested in learning more about that. In the meantime, if you're in any of these 5 places right now, maybe you're going through all of it all at once, I want you to know that again, this is not a sign to stop. It's not a sign to U-turn and turn around and go back to how things were. You're not doing anything wrong. This is a sign that you're doing things right, that you are getting closer and closer to that version of you that you know is in there, that you know you can access. You are doing it. And for what it's worth, I'm so fucking proud of you because I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is. I know how lonely it is. And sincerely from the bottom of my heart, I want you to know you're not alone in this. That is why this channel exists. That is why I am here. So please drop your comments. Let us know where you're at in your shadow work journey, how it's going for you. If you have any questions about anything, I'd love to hear from you. If you are not already subscribed to my YouTube channel, to my podcast, Self Help Witch, what are you doing? Subscribe. I'd love to have you. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram at dana.solara, DANASOLARA. In the meantime, I am here for you. I love you. Keep going, and I'll see you next time. Bye.